I want to talk about what's happening in Afghanistan. And I want to talk about this because it's scary, right? A lot of people are asking, what does this mean for the future of Afghanistan and the international community? Is this Taliban 2.0? Will this be a repeat of last time? But what even happened last time? Let's go back to 1953. After a series of wars to fight off the British Empire, the King of Afghanistan wanted to get his country back on its feet. He appoints his cousin Daud Khan to become Prime Minister, who sparks up a close friendship with the Soviet Union. However, after causing a big rift in the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Daud Khan resigns in 1964. At around the same time, there's this political party forming, led by this guy called Taraki, which follows a lot of communist ideologies. And then, out of nowhere, in 1973, Daud Khan comes back and overthrows the king in a military coup and establishes the Republic of Afghanistan, forming close ties with the USSR. But this was sort of short-lived because a few years later, the Communist Party kills Khan in a coup and then Taraki takes charge. Meanwhile, there are these people who are not too pleased with all the changes going on in their country. So they form a coalition of guerrilla warfare groups, collectively referred to as the Mujahideen, who begin to revolt against the government. In 1979, Taraki is killed, and then the USSR invades Afghanistan to try and protect the weakening communist regime. The Mujahideen unite against the Soviets and the Afghan army, then there's lots of fighting and millions of Afghans flee the country to claim asylum in Pakistan and Iran. While this was going on, the Mujahideen starts receiving arms from the US, Britain and other sources via Pakistan to help fight off the USSR. Fast forward to 1984, Osama bin Laden comes to Afghanistan on his first documented trip to support anti-Soviet fighters. 4 years later, and bin Laden's group Al-Qaeda is formed. And although the US is supporting the anti-Soviet fighters, Al-Qaeda isn't a big fan of the US either. Okay, so in 1989, a peace deal is agreed and the Soviet troops leave Afghanistan. All is good. For a while. In the early 1990s, this group called the Taliban is founded. They say they want to restore peace in Afghanistan, and fed up with all the fighting, Afghans generally welcomed the Taliban. By 1998, the Taliban were in control of almost 90% of Afghanistan. However, the group starts to introduce a lot of laws in line with their strict interpretation of Sharia law. There were public executions of convicted murderers and adulterers, and people's hands were cut off if they were found guilty of theft. Women weren't allowed an education after the age of 10 and also had to wear a burqa, and men couldn't shave their beards, plus more. And while all of this is going on, bin Laden has been setting up these training camps in Afghanistan with tens of thousands of recruits. And then
car bombs exploded outside the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam on the morning of August 7th, 1998.
Al-Qaeda is found responsible for these bombings, and so the US say to the Taliban, you guys need to tell us where bin Laden is. And the Taliban says, no, we don't. Things start to get worse, and then September 11th happened. Thousands are killed, and the US thinks bin Laden is the prime suspect. So they go back to the Taliban and say, turn over bin Laden. The Taliban don't, so a US-led coalition starts launching airstrikes. Troops begin entering Afghanistan, and by the end of 2001, the Taliban has lost almost all of its ground. So the UN starts to set up this new interim Afghan government, there's a presidential election, and a lot of effort and money is put in to try and rebuild Afghanistan. But the Taliban never really goes away, and starts regaining power in rural areas of the country. In 2011, bin Laden is killed and troops start withdrawing from Afghanistan because realistically, it'd be pretty impossible for the US and other forces to remain forever. At the height of it all, there were more than 1,100,000 American troops there, and it was costing the US more than $100 billion a year. It's estimated that around 66,000 Afghan national military and police, thousands of troops from different countries, hundreds of aid workers, and many journalists were killed during this time. Over 47,000 Afghan civilians lost their lives. Jump to 2019, and then US President Donald Trump and the Taliban decide to sign a peace deal, basically saying that the US will fully withdraw from Afghanistan in 2021. Fast forward to this year, the Taliban has gained more and more ground. However, US President Joe Biden said that US troops will still be removed before September. Skip to August, and officials warned that the whole of Afghanistan could fall within 90 days. 4 days after that was said, the Taliban entered the presidential palace in Kabul and the Afghan president fled the country. Many Afghans tried to get to Kabul airport to get a plane out of the country ahead of the US deadline of the 31st of August. I'm going to speak to Sunita Viswanath, who is the co-founder of Women For Afghan Women, the largest women's organisation in Afghanistan. I want to find out what life has been like leading up to the US Army leaving the country.
The last few years, we've known that, things were going to change. I mean, the one thing that has blindsided us is how quickly Kabul fell. That we weren't expecting. We thought we had time to keep everybody safe in Kabul. And so that's the last couple of months have been a time of evacuation and keeping people safe with fighting all around. And the last 10 days since August 15th, we barely slept. And then the people who are with us under our care right now, with us in Kabul, are a group of approximately 500 people. They are our highest risk people, staff families, and clients who are under our care and have nowhere else to go. So that's the group of people that we have been focused on trying to get evacuated. And it's been 10 days. We've been working with the US government, who is our largest funder, to try and get this highest risk group from the country's largest women's organization. To me, they should be the first, to get out of there. But it hasn't happened yet.
But as I'm sure you realise, the 31st has now passed and all US and other troops have officially left Afghanistan. Sunita informed me that she was not able to get any of her people evacuated, and it's not clear how many other Afghans have been left behind. So what does this mean for the future of Afghanistan, and will this be a repeat of last time? Over 70% of Afghans are under the age of 25, so all they really know is post-2001 Afghanistan, where women can get an education, you can use the internet, and there's an open media. So it's unclear as to how the Taliban will govern Afghanistan, and if they've even got the capacity to govern the country again. But they have already stated that they want to forget what happened in the past. A Taliban spokesperson said that the rights of women in Afghanistan will be respected within the framework of Islamic law. However, it's been reported that the Taliban have instructed women to stay at home until proper systems are in place to ensure their safety. As the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said,
"We will judge this regime based on the choices it makes and by its actions rather than by its words."
For people in the LGBTQ+ community, it's less ambiguous as to how the Taliban will act. Homosexuality was already an imprisonable offence in Afghanistan, but now that the Taliban are in power, the official punishment under Sharia law is death. It's also very up in the air as to how the Taliban will treat ethnic minorities, judges, journalists, teachers, Afghans who assisted the US and other forces, government officials, etc. And in terms of the international community, many Afghans will now try to leave Afghanistan to claim asylum overseas. While the Taliban insists it will not pose a threat to other countries, a major fear is that the country will once again become a training ground for terrorism. There was the ISIS bombing attack in Kabul airport, and then there's the question whether Al-Qaeda will use this post-withdrawal period to regroup. So that was my attempt of making the history and potential future of Afghanistan as simple as possible. But realistically, it's not simple at all. It's far more complex and multi-layered than I made it out to be. Instead, take this video as inspiration to do your own research, explore the discourse, understand different points of view, and most importantly, keep an open mind.